I'm Allie Zendrian, founder of A to Z Communications, and this is the Brand Stories podcast. This is where we talk about everything related to branding, marketing, and public relations. My guest this week is the fabulous Natalie Hales, known for her niche marketing and the sprints that she puts advisors through to help them know themselves better and therefore find the people who they can serve best. We chat about where niche marketing is now and where it's heading. So, Natalie, I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of fangirling a little bit because I saw you on LinkedIn Live once and just the sheer volume of people that you had interested in all that you were sharing. I was like, this woman is a rock star. Colleen, thank you so much for introducing the two of us, and I'm glad that we get to have a great conversation for my audience. So, thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me. I so appreciate the invite. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, the first question that I ask everybody is what's their favorite brand and why?
That is a great question. I think I'm going to have to say Ritz-Carlton. I think going through the business schooling and going through case studies, they have been kind of the top tier in terms of how to move kind of like traditional values for service into the modern world for as long as I can remember. And I think they do still such an amazing job of adapting at every single turn to what the world is now and how customer service can be done right. I think that there's other hotel chains like Marriott, and they're kind of coming up in terms of how to do customer service right. But the Ritz-Carlton, in terms of white glove service and how to do customer appreciation, they are just top tier in terms of what to model yourself on in terms of service. So that's a brand I got to admire.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you pick them. When you focus on service, I feel like I've seen so much marketing that says financial advisor XYZ, we have the best client service. And it just feels like it's words on a page versus when you really experience it and you can describe it in a way that feels real. How do you help advisors get to that point that it's not just we do white glove it, that people really believe it?
Yeah, you are so right. Anybody can say it. Not a lot of people actually do it. And when you are doing it, you can get specific. It sounds different. You can point to exactly what's different about it. I have a client that spends this initial kind of like 2-hour meeting with her large clients that goes into a level of detail it wouldn't even occur to most financial advisors to. And of course, she gives them a heads up. She talks about what they'll do. She talks about exactly what they're going to cover. She preps them for this 2-hour meeting. But at the end, these people feel more seen by her. And she has more testimonials talking about how deeply she knows them as a result of this deep dive. That is something specific that it's not just talk about customer service and holistic planning and da 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 da. It's no, this is something that she specifically does. And the way that she does it is above everybody else. And so it gets talked about. So they can point to something specific.
And I mean, a 2-hour investment, when I think of if you're going to ask me for 2 hours of my time, what could I be doing? The kids could have like gotten somewhere that they needed to go, client work or whatnot. But that's an investment both on the client side and the advisor side. So the fact that somebody even trusts enough to give that and allow that says a lot about that advisor.
There's so much that went into just planning that, getting people to say yes to that, making sure it's a special experience, that it's so intentional that there is no hesitation on their side in terms of whether or not they should do it, whether or not they should show up for it, even to the point where they're going to rave about it afterwards. And so it's a very intentional designed experience. And if you're going to talk about your process, that's the level you should aspire to.
Agreed. So for anybody who might not be familiar with you, which if you don't like get on LinkedIn, what are you doing? Can you explain the work that you do and how you got into this specific kind of marketing?
Yeah, of course. So the work that I do at its highest level is I help financial advisors discover their niche, put some brand language around that, and market to their niches. I think the way that I do that and get those foundations in place is very different. And who I enjoy to work with is probably very different as well. I help advisors kind of do this through sprints, another very designed experience for financial advisors that helps them get very deep. So how I do it is different, and who I work with and who I prefer to to work with, I think, are very different as well. I work intentionally with these purpose-driven advisors who are really, I guess, sick of not being able to show their true self and who it is that they really connect with and being able to turn that into their business. And so what I help them do is really, in terms of stats, is up level exactly who they're working with in their book of business, but in a way that makes sure that they're known for what they love to do, what they're truly good at. And so how I got into it, though, is a completely different story. So yeah, I'm not here to make anybody cry, but I will say that how I got into the industry was a bit dramatic and tragic on my side. So I had just graduated university a little later than most, 24, and my dad had suffered a massive stroke. And we actually found out that it was caused by a rare hereditary disease, which meant that I also had a 50-50 shot of getting this like dire neurological disease. And so if you can imagine just starting my life fresh out of university, just really into like the working world, working full time at a marketing firm, to find out that I could be starting strokes by the time I was 35, have dementia, severe migraines constantly. Obviously, all the physical effects that come along with having strokes continuously, as well as the neurological ones, to then likely not living past 55. That was the outlook that I was facing. And it was a crazy time because my mom was also disabled and my dad, he was the sole breadwinner at the time. And to have that stop for my family without, they had never worked with a financial advisor before. They didn't have proper policies and products in place. And so it was devastating, both emotionally, financially, mentally. And I was lost. But my boss at the time, lovely guy, he said, you got to go see my financial advisor. And like, that didn't even occur to me. We were a very blue collar family. Didn't even occur. And I did. I went and I saw him. And what struck me, because I was very nervous to do something like this, was that he sat me down and shared that his dad had actually passed away from heart disease when he was around my age. His mother also didn't work. And so he understood my situation and he connected with me on another level. He showed me empathy. And I walked into that meeting just a hot mess. And I walked out of it just feeling like 1,000 pounds had come off my shoulders. And it was unforgettable. And when I went back to work, I should say it was like 6 months, the worst 6 months of my life, but eventually found out that through my own genetic testing that I did not have the disease. So I'll just preface that. But when I did go back to work, we really focused on working with financial advisors. And I never forgot my own experience. And from then, I just kind of bounced around in the financial services in terms of what I was doing and working with them. So from marketing to coaching to then getting acquired by a coaching firm, really figuring out through that experience what works for advisors and what doesn't in terms of growth, and eventually helping to build Canada Life's business solutions consultants, their team there. And when they had an opening on kind of teaming and transition, kind of helping pair junior advisors with senior advisors, analyzing books of business by profitability, things like that, I joined Canada Life and I was there for like 9 years. I had bounced around from more practice management. I missed the creative side, so I ended up moving back into branding. But I had slowly moved away from working with financial advisors directly and working more with consultants. And so I wanted to kind of go back to my roots, like the whole reason why I was really in this in the first place and focused on financial advisors. So when I started my own business, I had a really good understanding of what works and what doesn't in this business, as well as some of the more heavy compliance and things, regulations, and everything that kind of comes along with the business, all the bottlenecks, as well as all the growth moves. And so I took all that information and I started my own business. And I think that this foundational work with financial advisors is some of the most important work I'll ever do in my life, because it's truly helping those advisors connect with who they should be serving and enjoying the work that they're doing and getting it out there.
Well, first of all, I'm so sorry for everything that you had to go through, and thank you for being vulnerable with me and with the audience. I appreciate that. And I'm so glad that you're doing the work that you're doing, because you're very obviously passionate about it, in addition to being good at it, which is always fabulous. In your case, you found that advisor who basically seemed like they were dropped from heaven for you. Like, who else could literally be in your same shoes and know how you're feeling without you almost even having to say a word? How do you help other advisors get to that place that they can, be who they are to then find who they're best suited for.
Part of what I do that's kind of, it's talked about through testimonials, but it's not something that I really go very deep into on some things like my website. It like is the experience that I provide in order to build that confidence. I think it's sequencing exactly what those decisions are and how they're made and helping somebody to kind of move through those right decisions around where they should be focused, and how they can go about doing that, how they can put language around that, and then what are those differentiators that they should be talking about to then moving to where they should be talking about them and how they can do that in a way that's not going to break their business and kind of talk about their capacity. All the decisions that need to be made, they can be so overwhelming. And so I've structured the sprints that I do with financial advisors very intentionally to help them make these decisions in the right order in a way that stacks one on the other in order to build confidence in the entire process. So that by the time they're coming out of it, not only are they having such a deep understanding of who they are and how they can shine, but also feeling very good about next steps. And so we lay down those foundational things and kind of move through those decisions in sprints and then move forward in more of a retainer style to help turn up the heat on that every single month.
Love it. So, what does a sprint feel like? I'm just trying to imagine, and I used to run. I'm a very, very, very slow runner. But so really, it's designed in like a short burst of time, or it's like the speed at which you're going, or both?
Yeah, so it is an accelerated process in order to make decisions. So what ends up happening is the kind of the questionnaire and the diagnosis is the first step. And so really getting it all on the table, moving through answering some of the questions and going deep and having my analysis on your responses all the way through is an important part of the process. And that is completely transparent in how I do all my work. And that's intentional because I want advisors to see my thoughts as I'm moving through understanding them and what the possibilities are, to then building potential avenues for strategies that they can, whether that's niching or positioning or brand language. I'm kind of developing all my strategies and helping them understand how I've come to these decisions through the process before getting on a 90-minute call and kind of pitching them, here's how we could do this. We could go this way, and I would kind of position you like this, or we talk about this, to then making a decision on that. So there's option A, there's option B, here's how we would do both. And let's talk about what could work for you. And by the end of the call, we've made a decision. And I'm summarizing that for them in a playbook after that and sending that to them for the review. And then we're meeting again to debrief, to discuss everything, all the decisions that we've made, how we feel about all of them still before moving on and discussing how we're going to go through the next sprint, which is going to be either focused on, like I said, either the niche positioning or the brand articulation, the language, all the way to like marketing planning.
Love that. So it's 2026 now. How do you feel like niching needs to be? Because I feel like whether it was a few decades ago or even just earlier this decade, somebody could say, I work with dentists or I work with doctors. I mean, is that the appropriate level now? Does it need to be doctors in a certain area, or where do you feel like that lands now?
Yeah, I think that obviously we've really evolved in terms of search, in terms of even just moving from SEO to AEO and everything that kind of comes along with that. I know everybody's talking about that, so I'm not going to focus there because I think there's probably 1,000,001 podcasts that speak to that. I think what needs to happen for advisors, though, is yes, you need to be able to explain very clearly who you work with, but I think you need to understand at a very detailed and specific level your focus. And so I always, when I'm walking advisors through this in my work, as well as in some of my keynotes, I talk to them about moving from your mega market, which is that broad category of people that see themselves as a group. And so, for example, that is doctors. You have to go from that to then understanding what your natural connection is there. You have to be able to say why you are focused and why you're credible to actually speak to doctors. And so you have to understand what your natural connection is there, be able to kind of tell your story around that and why it matters to you beyond money. And then you kind of have to get down even one level deeper to understanding what that market niche actually is, which involves kind of strategic ownership, taking what is your edge to then what is that area that you're going to own? And so a lot of that involves deciding what you're targeting. Is it something like their geography? Is it their psychographics? Like, what is it about you that you're tapping into? And so it's about kind of having that deeper level of understanding for you. Like, how you describe it is very different, and how you articulate that in your brand is going to be very different than how you've actually niched down, because you need to understand what that broader category is, what your natural connection is, what your strategic edge is, where you can actually own part of that market. And so those are all the things that you need to consider before you can even decide whether or not that's an operational niche, like whether it's going to be profitable and if it's specific enough. Because without that, going into that level of detail yourself, you're not going to be able to properly explain. Yeah, you're not going to be able to be credible. You're not going to be able to, because niche authority and niche marketing is very different than just regular marketing. And so you do need to be able to kind of stand up and say why you can own a part of this market effectively.
So I feel like you were reading my mind when you were talking about, and not just because of the money, because I can imagine financial advisors in some cases just kind of look around and say, well, who has a bunch of money and therefore who should I help? Which you want to be able to take care of yourself and or your family for the rest of your life. I get it. But so then how difficult is it for somebody to pivot from, I picked accountants because I felt like they had a lot of money, but I have no connection to them, to I have a connection to artists, so I should go there. Are you seeing some of that happening?
Oh, well, you're bang on. I think a lot of advisors, they see some of those avenues where the money is. And so how many financial advisors will target doctors or lawyers only to find out that they hate working with doctors or lawyers? So if you don't enjoy what you do and you don't have some thoughts on why you do it and be able to kind of codify your brand and speak to why you have the expertise that you do and what that expertise actually is, no, you're not going to be able to have a foothold. And so I don't believe in just picking niches kind of willy-nilly for that reason.
And I mean, based on that, I feel like you would be a great tool to anybody who's starting to get into the business, because as you have all this knowledge that you've gained, whether you took your CFP or whatever it is, you have all this technical knowledge, but nobody's explained to you, like, okay, well, observe your inner aura and determine who you should. That's never a class. So yeah. I so appreciate the work that you're doing, and I hope that more people, especially as they're getting started, can start working with you, because then you've really set yourself up for success for the rest of your life, I would think.
Definitely. This is like foundational work in order to have real growth in your business. And it starts here. And so that's why I'm so keen on helping advisors understand those layers of their audience, as well as like their prospects, because it feeds into every aspect of your business, not just marketing. It feeds into operational growth and what's possible. And so it's the foundational work that every financial advisor should be focused on before they can attain real growth.
Love it. So I know that you mentioned keynote speaking, and you have a few exciting things that are coming up for you. Anything you want to announce, or anywhere that people should be aware to find your brilliance?
Well, I am going deep in the levels of how to niche and become smarter as an advisor in Sydney, MDRT, in late August. So I'll be there. I also have a bit of a roadshow, a podcast that I do on a regular basis. So always very happy to kind of share my knowledge wherever I can. But that's kind of a big one. Thank you for asking. I love kind of sharing the fact that the stages they're getting bigger and more interesting. And so I'm excited to kind of share. And what I do for myself and my business is building that niche authority. So is what I do for financial advisors. So kind of moving into these spaces that get bigger and more global is exactly what I want to be able to do for advisors.
Well, you know what? If anybody's earned that kind of stage and platform, you have. And thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us. I appreciate it, Lena.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime.